Hey everybody, Lieutenant Joe Pangaro here for the Blue Heart Podcast. Today we're going to talk about something that's, could be considered gory, so make sure there's only cops around when you're listening to this. True crime fans might like it. Adults can handle it. But, some of the things that we see as law enforcement officers they're pretty gory. All right. We do see some horrible things. People do some bad things to each other, don't they? So we're going to talk about today what it means when someone is stabbed multiple times, all right, or what it can mean. One of the things you need to consider when you're doing that. So, first, I want to thank our sponsors for having us here. Uh, the Blue Heart podcast is brought to you by Blue 360 Media. All right, blue360media.com. That's my publisher. They publish everything law enforcement. Medicalessentialdiagnostics.com. They are a health screening company for everybody who works for any entity of the state of New Jersey, town, county, whatever. You and two other adults can get a full health screening at no cost to you. Find out there's something wrong, you can live, right? And then for Riot Tint, they make window glazing. I call it glazing. It's covering for windows and it can help protect from violence, right? The Riot Tint's amazing. It works with a electrical button, a fob kind of a thing, and you can frost out a window. It's good for schools and businesses for safety and security. So I want to thank them for being here. So the whole idea of, stabbing, we know we deal with stabbing. People stab each other. It happens. Uh, Sometimes a knife is a brutal instrument to use on another human being. Now, we know in law enforcement, we're taught what the 21-foot rule. If somebody has a blade and they're within 21 feet of you, they can get to you and stick it in you before you can draw your weapon to protect yourself or find some other way to protect yourself, right? So blades are historically they're deadly. We know in Europe, a lot of people, terrorist people, a lot of people who attack each other, they don't have access to the guns we have here, so they use blades a lot. So in criminal investigations, we know that a lot of people carry knives. Some of them carry it for utility because it's part of their job, right? I know people that carry box cutters because they work in a store where they got to cut boxes, so they always have a box cutter on them. I know other people. My dad was an electrician and he carried a pocket knife that had a screwdriver set in it and a blade because you never know when he has to do something electrical and needs a knife or some other kind of a tool that's in there. And then other people carry knives for protection and they say to you, I carry this knife for protection. And okay, I get that. As law enforcement, we carry guns, right? We carry guns with us for protection. A lot of us carry a knife because you never know. Knife's a good utility tool. It's excellent. When it comes to stabbing people, though, let's look at a couple scenarios because we're going to expand this out a little bit because there is deeper meaning to stabbing sometimes depending on the context of the attack. So if somebody is going to do a criminal act, and they have a knife and they show up and they're going to rob people. They're going to take your phone, take your wallet, take your money, take your necklace, whatever they're going to take. And they pull a knife on you. Now, the knife, no matter the size, is to intimidate you and to scare you. You see a knife, this person could stick me with it, right? And I could get cut. They could slash me. So, therefore, I don't want that to happen. I'm just going to give you what you want and hope you run away. Now, law enforcement, we may or may not give up our stuff. If somebody catches us off guard and they pull a knife on you, you got to decide, can you disarm this person? Can you fight you out of it? Do you want to get stuck? Right? What if you're with your family? What if they accidentally hit your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your child, or something like that? So we have to think before we get into these situations. But that's the purpose when somebody brings a knife to a robbery, is to intimidate you and scare you. All right. So the bigger the knife, you say to yourself, gee, obviously the bigger the knife gives me more reach if I'm the bad guy. If you got a little knife, you have to get really in close with somebody. When I was working, we had an incident where there was a house party. All these teenagers, 16 through 17, 18-year-old kids, they were all drinking and hanging out, and two dudes got into a fight, like fellas do, fighting over a girl or beer or some other stupidity. And they started fist fighting, and one guy reached in his pocket and he pulled out a blade that went on his finger, and the blade was only about this big, an inch and a half, 2 inches. And while he was fighting, he punched this guy in the chest. Well, it penetrated deep enough to cut one of the arteries in his chest, and this kid bled out and died. It was a homicide. Now, was his intent to murder him? But what was the purpose of the knife? Right? He used that knife purposely to hit this guy to hurt him. Whether or not it was purpose to kill him, that's about somebody's mindset, and we deal with that in court. But the reality of it was this little knife, this small little 2-inch blade, hit in just the right spot, cut this kid's artery, and he bled out and died. So that punch was one punch, right? The kid that had the knife on punched one time, and the victim got punched in this fight, felt it, felt himself get stabbed, backed up, saw the blood, and basically that was the end of the fight. Now, that might have been the guy with the knife's thought. Hey, I got this blade because this guy's bigger than me. I don't think I can beat it. Whatever his thought was, he put this blade on, and he got into this fight, and he hit the guy and cut him. The victim saw he got cut, felt he got cut, backed up, and ended up bleeding out and dying. It led to all kinds of other stuff. But that was one hit with the blade to serve the purpose of either scaring a guy, hurting him enough where he backed off. Maybe the guy with the blade didn't think a 2-inch blade would kill anybody, didn't realize how close a lot of these blood vessels are in our bodies, right? You hit somebody in the neck with a blade and you hit one of the arteries going to the brain, you kill somebody. In the chest, there's lots of ways, lots of places we can get hit and die, right? That's why we have to be so careful when we got somebody with a blade. But that's one time. That's one hit with the knife. That was the point. He didn't hit him repeatedly. He hit him one time. So in my second book, The Investigation, which you can see over there, that is about a brutal double homicide. And in this brutal double homicide, and I've talked about it, go back in the episodes and you'll see where I actually talk about the book and the murder. In that criminal investigation, this double homicide, the killer in that story used a very, very long steak knife. A big industrial steak knife, like you would see at the butcher store, and another big blade to kill and then chop up his victims. Again, pretty gross, right? But in that case, the killer used the long knife, and I'm telling you, it was a long 10, 12-inch blade, stabbed his victim, who happened to be the mother of his child. They were unmarried, but they had a relationship, a child. And he stabbed her ultimately 33 times, repeated stabbing, right? How many times do you need to stab somebody? So this is where, as police officers, investigators, we need to think about what somebody does, what was their mindset, so that we can completely understand why and how this crime happened. It's one thing to say, yeah, he stabbed this girl 33 times. Boy, and obviously 33 stabs, you want someone to die, or at least that would be the implication. If I hit you one time, like the two kids fighting, I can maybe make a case that, hey, I was afraid of the guy. It was a small blade and I hit him. I just wanted to scare him, cut him a little bit so he would leave me alone, whatever. 33 times you stab someone, then you can see that the mindset of that person is different than maybe somebody who's using a blade for intimidation or for protection or for slashing. So you scare someone. So this guy stabs his girl 33 times. Matter of fact, after he hit her a couple of times, we could tell by the crime scene, she went down and he continued to stab her on the ground. The blade went right through her in several of these hits through her body. So in the book, I talk about letting the crime scene talk to you. The damage that's done to the victim will often speak to you, the investigator, the officer, about the mindset of the person who did the damage. What were they doing? Well, one punch was to do lots of different things. Multiple stabs really reveals an emotional attack. They had to be enraged, upset, or determined for some reason. Now, if somebody came to get my family, and you see how nuanced this can be, and this is the investigator, you got to think about all this. If I'm somewhere and a guy jumps out and he wants to attack my family, and I happen to have a knife, and we get into a fight, and I think he's got a weapon, he might hurt my family or kill me, I might stab him repeatedly to try and get him to stop or to overpower him. I might do that, right? Bang, 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 until the guy finally stops. When we shoot at someone who's trying to hurt us or hurt a third party, what do? We shoot until they stop, right? We're not shooting to kill somebody, we're shooting to stop the threat. Well, it's the same idea. If somebody's doing that to me and I have a blade to protect myself, I might hit them. They don't back off. I'll hit them again. They don't back off. I hit them again, right? That kind of a thing. So the damage that's done to the person can often tell you, the officer, the mindset of the person. So now you're going to gather the rest of your facts and you find out that, oh, this happened because this man was with his family. He happened to have a knife. The bad guy came along and threatened him, and they ended up in a fight. And he thought they were going to, and he used the weapon to stop him. That's why he stabbed him 6 times before the guy finally succumbed to the bleeding, bled out, and fell down and stopped the action. But multiple stabbings of a victim is different. And this is the point I want you to understand. We often see a blade, when a blade is used, especially in a domestic violence or other kind of relational attack, a blade is a very personal weapon, right? You're not shooting somebody from across the room. You're right up close to them and you're physically sticking them with a blade into their body. So that is a very personal thing that people do. So when we look at interracial, not interracial, interrelational, like relationship kind of a thing, what we see is when domestic violence happens and there's stabbing involved, there's often multiple stabs because it is often there's a bit of rage involved. There's some kind of anger. It's personal. You're attacking, and the blade is often seen psychologically as a phallic symbol. It's a power symbol. It's a power symbol, right? And so when I say that, like a phallic symbol, when you think about the psychosexual response between people, and when someone's enraged, feels they've been betrayed, they're angry at this person, they're losing control. What do we see? People beat people up when they feel they're losing control of their partner. They keep them in the house. They won't let them out. They brutalize them. Well, when it comes to the point of stabbing, this is even more personal. This is even more, I control you and I will stab you, right? And when you're stabbing and it's multiple stabs, that is often very, very indicative of that interrelational kind of a power situation that I own you, you are mine, you will not leave me, you betrayed me, you hurt me, and I am going to take it out on you. All right. And there is a psychosexual component to that. So if we think of where have we seen that besides in my book, in this case I investigated, you want to also look to the Idaho College murderers, right? Now, I had talked about them in a previous episode, but we all know that case is going on and on. And this guy, I think it's Kronberger, I think that's his name. He was arrested and charged, excuse me, because they found a sheath from the knife that was used to murder these 4 college kids. They found DNA, and it's his DNA. So right now it's going through the courts. How did the cops get the DNA? Can we get the DNA? All that kind of thing. But the reality is, it's his DNA on the sheath that was found, I think, under one of the victims. And he stabbed each victim multiple times, right? Multiple times. Doesn't appear there was any sexual assault. We haven't heard that in the reports yet. That would have come up by this point. When you charge somebody with murder, you would have charged them with sexual assault, murder, etc. We don't have sexual assault, but we have multiple stabbings, right? And we know that multiple stabbings can be rage. There's a phallic component. There's a control over this person. There's a psychosexual component. And what I connected to it, and I don't have all the facts. I'm not there investigating in Idaho. I'm looking at the news reports and what I've heard. And what I saw that as an incel incident. The involuntarily celibate community often engages in this kind of violence, especially male incels, right? So the whole idea is that this guy, this killer, lusted after these girls, wanted these girls, and felt inadequate that he couldn't get them. They may have rebuffed him. There's some incident, he might have seen one of them, asked them out, and they said no. But the whole idea is that he went into that house using a large blade, a personal weapon, and stabbed them multiple times in their beds and killed them and took off. You say, okay, if he committed a robbery and he killed people, I would see that. If he had a beef with somebody, with the boyfriend that he killed three women and one guy, that maybe there's a connection to that. If it was, some other kind of thing you could connect to why he ended up killing them. But the fact that he just stabbed them all repeatedly in their bed, and then you kind of know what this guy is all about. He was known as a creepy guy at his own college, which wasn't far from where these kids were murdered. He said weird things to women. This is what the reports have been, that he was awkward around women. We know that the police say that they had video of his car going by the event. So the whole idea is that he had a problem that these women or women like them, right? So go see the incel episode. In short, an incel male is a male that feels he cannot get the women that he wants as sexual partners, that they are the most beautiful women, and he is not adequate enough to get them, and that inadequacy leads to frustration, and then they strike out sometimes. There's been some mass killers that are incels that have attributed their mass killing, especially of women, to this feeling of frustration. It's a very important thing, and you need to know about it. It's going to come up more and more in our investigations. Go back and see that episode. All right. So when I see that, and he stabbed them multiple times, in my book, in this case I investigated, this guy was angry and jealous at the mother of his child, thought she was cheating on him, stabbed her multiple times. Multiple stabbings, interrelationship, when there's a relationship going on, can be indicative of that psychosexual component, that rage, that anger. And the blade is a very, very personal weapon. It's showing that person, I have power over you. I am penetrating you over and over and over again. Even if they're not thinking that, that's what the psychiatrists tell us this is really all a part of. So, like I said, this is a disgusting thing to think of, and people don't like to think about it, but we have to. It's part of our job. When we look at a crime scene, we look at what happened to the victims, whether they survived the attack or not. Look at the damage that was done to them. How was it done to them? What was the method of the damage? The weapons used? Was it hands, fists, feet, clubs, knives, bars, guns, whatever? And that will help inform you as to the mindset of the person who did it. And that's going to help you. Wouldn't that help you when you interview the person to know that that's what they were driven by, that you could ask questions about it? Wouldn't it be good to know where else you might find evidence based on that? People, when you interview witnesses or friends, did he ever talk about this? Did she ever say something like that? And elicit that information. So I'm going to tell you right now, do yourself a favor and get the book, The Investigation, from Blue 360 Media or on Amazon, and pay attention to the crime scenes you go to and the people you deal with. This is our profession. This is what we do. We need to understand these things. So I want to thank everybody for being here. Remember, go see my sponsors. They're awesome. And like the show, subscribe to the show, and tell all your friends about it. Until we meet again, my friends, this is Lieutenant Joe for the Blue Heart Podcast.